I was asked to speak about the future, and I'm thinking, the future? First of all, I don't want to give any handouts on it, and I definitely don't want to tape it, because when you're predicting the future, talking about the future, somebody might pull that out. But we're going to talk a little bit about just my experiences in traveling over the last 12 to 18 months. One of my goals as chair of the ASNet group was to travel between the US and Canada and visit as many user group meetings and brokers and agencies as I could. And I met hundreds. And so what I do have is a very, very good perspective regionally around the country, both the US and Canada, of what's going on, and most especially what we're doing with technology. And that's what I want to share with today when we talk about the future. One thing we know about the future is it will involve change. And as Wendy mentioned, I'm an agent or proponent of change because I think that the only way we can get better is to change. Who wants to work harder and faster? Okay, well, we got a couple hands, so that surprises me, but most of us want to just work smarter, right? So we want to be able to understand what we can do with technology. But one of the things that I've noticed over the travels is that a lot of us were presented with technology and then went back and said, now how do I take this technology and put it in my brokerage? And I wanted to twist that around. So what I'm going to talk about for the next hour is let's talk about the business issues that we all face. And then I'm going to tie in technology and just how that might resolve some of those issues, because that's what it's really about. We're faced with business issues. And when we talk about the future, we're going to operate our businesses a lot differently. If you follow the scale of when we used to make most of our business decisions historically, based off historical data, we'd run reports from last year and try and make decisions for this year, right? So then we came into this real-time environment, okay? Real-time meaning that we want to make decisions with real information that's available right now, right? So when we're looking for things that are going on in our agency or brokerage today. But the future is going to be more of that business experience of the future and doing some business intelligence. Looking at what we have available, looking at the data we have on our clients, and predicting what their next purchase will be, or what their next service need will be, or in the claims process, what's going to be their next issue that they're going to come up with. And being able to predict that and handling that and moving our brokerages from being reactive to proactive. How many would agree that we're more of a reactive type business? Okay, because we come in with Monday with the best intentions, but what happens by Monday afternoon? Okay, we're all reactive. And it's Wednesday before we get to Monday's tasks. And it just keeps moving on and on that way. I always tell our CSRs and our producers the same thing, whether it be sales leads are tracking through our system or the CSR is tracking some service. Whatever doesn't get accomplished that day and moves to the next, there's another group of transactions or needs coming in. So it's very, very hard to get out of a backlog. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about the future is just being able to embrace it and being able to change with that and be able to predict that. Because a lot of us are in workflows that all of our business operations have changed around us, but we continue to do the same workflows that we've done for years. We've gotten a computer put in front of us, and sometimes we just barely automate them. And remember, automatic, a little bit of automation going on there. And a lot of times we just use it as a glorified Rolodex card system, which I mentioned that to my son. He didn't know what a Rolodex was. But that's the way we use our systems a lot of times. I just want to show you a quick video about change. I show this to our staff because we have things changing around us and we're so used to doing something or riding some type of automation path and something happens and what do? We can't get off the escalator. So we want to make sure to understand that when we're going through changes. So I think about that. I think, well, that's something that we have to be aware of. We have to be able to be able to modify our behaviors, right? Be able to change in order to get out of some of the things that we're in. When we talk about the future, well, we have some things that are obviously going to be challenging us from an economic and industry side. We have our outside influences that we basically have no control over. And we will sit there in the brokerage or in our agency operations meetings and talk about this company does this and this company does that, and they're not doing it the same way. And I really got tired of always waiting for one of the carriers to do something. No offense to the carriers in the room. I said, let's come back into the agency side and say, what do we have control over when it comes to workflow? Let's get a handle on what we have control over and make that the most efficient workflow we can until we need to pass it over to our partners. So that was one thing when we're talking about outside challenges is we don't have control over it, so let's come in and worry about what we do have control over. We obviously have the internet and e-commerce. Cal covered that very well about all the challenges we have there in answering what people are asking from a communication standpoint. We can't just assume everybody wants email, right? Text messaging. We don't know if everybody takes text messaging. We need to find out what our preferred method of contacts are. Because we have internet and e-commerce, which defining where does the broker fit in there? Are we in the position of educating, or are we supposed to be servicing there, or do we need to make the sale on the internet? And we need to understand those pieces. We have market changes both in personal and commercial lines. In the States, I used to talk about this hardening market that would come someday. Well, we're starting to see a little bit of that. I'm not sure how it is in Canada as far as the market conditions go, but markets do soften and harden as they go through their cycles. So we have to understand that and be able to work with it as far as the future goes. Shrinking contingencies and bonus income have always been an issue, and that's because as companies go into different market cycles, obviously profitability starts to change. We have competition from other delivery options, the direct writers. And it's not always that they are doing something a little bit differently than us, it's they're grasping onto some of this technology, allowing the ability for the consumer to go to the internet and research and buy and service. Outsourcing of underwriting and rating type tasks. And I think that's when you talk about the future, I don't know if there's any more that could come back to the brokerage to do, but I go back 30 years ago when a fax machine went off, we all ran out the front to see it because who else had a fax machine? We didn't see who was sending us something. We did applications with carbon paper. Again, my son didn't know what that was either. But we did carbon papered apps, and we'd file one in the paper, and we'd send that application off, and guess what? Hands off. We didn't have to do anything. And our commission rates were 22% for auto, 25% for home, and 30% for general liability. And it was such an easy job. I came in at noon, left around 3. I mean, I thought insurance was fun, Cal. Well, that soon changed as this all began to be outsourced to us. Now, I'm not saying that's not right. In fact, you'll hear it through my presentation that at the point of contact, I think it's best that the broker or agent has that ability to get that information. So it's not that it's not in the right place, but have we changed our workflows? Have we understood what's happened here about the amount of work that we're consuming? Because what are the average commission rates now? In the States, about 14%. So half of what we were making. And if you talk about an automated workflow, we were doing a survey to find out how long does it take to do a personal lines auto quote from start to finish, the minute they call to the point of proposal. And it's over an hour. Well, that's how long it took me with a manual and a calculator and a pencil. Okay, so a lot of things, automation doesn't necessarily make more efficient for us. The business has become more complex. But our biggest thing too is our changing expectations of the consumer. When we look at the changing expectations of the consumer, we look at different things like multi-generational. We have more generations to deal with than any time ever. Okay, we used to have the baby boomers, long groups of generations, right? And now it seems like every couple of years another generation starts up with new habits. And they buy and act a lot differently. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But the important thing as an agency or brokerage is, am I going to pick on one generation or do I need to be multi-generational? That means I need to go to them in the way they want to communicate and respond, as Kel mentioned. Because we have different age groups to deal with different ways that they've been brought up. One of the things we did in our agency is we moved from our traditional server environment to a cloud environment. And one of those was my son coming in, who joined the business a couple years ago, and telling me, Dad, I really like the insurance business, but I don't like what you do. I thought, well, what's that? And he says, well, that computer stuff. You know, they're used to a plug-and-play environment. So they don't want to go into what we had to do was open up a box, put a little duct tape on this wire, and add a little chip here, and do that type of stuff. They're not there to build it. They just want to use it. So we have to understand it not only for our customer, but our employees. What's the average age of a principal in Canada? In states, about 58. So it's an aging group of us. And how do we attract youth? Well, it's not the most exciting business when we have computers and we don't use them. All right? Because that's the way it is. People are looking for a phone number, but they don't necessarily sit there and work with their systems. They don't let the systems work for them. And so these new generations that are coming through, expecting a certain amount of technology, don't really get to see it. And so we need to be out there changing, not necessarily just for our consumer, but also for our staffing needs that we're going to need in the future. Of course, the digital age has a lot of changes on expectations, 24/7. Can you imagine working past 5, 10 years ago? And now it's a 24/7 environment. And not only is it just being available 24/7, but they want answers at the point of contact. They want it resolved while they're on the phone. This really falls into what Cal mentioned with real time. How can we respond at the point of contact without having information available to us in real time? And not only having it available to us in real time, but very quickly at touches of a button here and a button there. I'm going to show that as we conclude the day today, just about how we get information now in this real-time environment, how we work with changes and payments and claims handling and filing, and all of that at point of contact. Because the old workflow of taking the message and saying, I'll get back with you when I get back with you, is not passing. It's not flying anymore. People want the ability to rate and buy. They want the ability to service. They want the ability to pay in their own terms and on their own time frames. And so we have all these different issues that are coming up. Communication changes. This just turned from green to red. That doesn't look good. What does that mean? I don't know. It's green now. There's an awful lot of buttons on here. Yeah, I'm not used to so much technology in a little box like this. I'm stuck, and we can't move now. So communication changes. What do we have for communication? Well, we have email, which again is probably the biggest time waster that we have in our office, is it not? And so we sit there and tie ourselves to the email. And some of us even have that little message that says, you got mail. Continually interrupting our day. And what do we do when we see that? Who ignores it? Yeah, very few actually ignore it. Actually, I've got mail, I'm going to go answer it. And so they leave the tasks that they're doing consistently during the day. And this is happening to your service staff, your sales staff, your management staff, and just think about what we're doing to them. Okay, and because it's been so disruptive during the day, we give them a BlackBerry or an iPhone or something to take with them at night so they can answer it all night long. Okay, so email is an issue. Live chat. How many of you offer live chat on your websites? Okay, that's something that we put into place, and it's been a great tool because as we hire new people into the agency, new being a little younger than I am, they're used to multitasking because they did it all the time. That's the environment they were brought up in. They truly do multitask. So we're watching a service staff with the chats handling 5 or 6 different client conversations at one time. Because you can't do that in the telephone environment, right? But you can in the chat environment. And what's really nice is when we're done with the chat, it sends a transcript through to our management system to be attached and track all the issues that were discussed. So we would actually like to encourage that. Think of the last time you went in for a transaction. You had the opportunity to do a live chat versus picking up the phone. What would you choose? I've started to choose the live chat. You get somebody right away, conversation goes back and forth. Just seems like it's getting done quicker than going through a phone system. But yet we're not embracing some of this technology. What about text messaging? How many of you are text messaging from your agency to your clients? From your brokerage to your clients? Thought if I changed the word, the hands would go up, but I guess it's the same. Nobody's text messaging. But that's a really important piece, right? When my son came in, we were working on a physician that he was working on some coverage on that was a little older than he was. I'd ask some questions because I'm helping him out. And he'd give me the answers, and I kept looking at him, and what he's doing is he's texting him, and the guy's texting back. I'm not used to that. We would just send an envelope with a return postage and wait for the reply. He's just typing away on the text messaging, getting those replies back. What challenges do we have as a brokerage now? E&O. We get text messaging going on. Where, when, how is it being attached? So we instituted some rules in our agency, like you could do in your brokerage, of doing text messaging from our management system, so it gets saved and the responses come back and they get attached also, because there's a lot of conversation going on there. But again, it's coming back and then realizing that we have changes in communication. So in our contact information in the brokerage, we make sure to maintain everybody's preferred method of contact and what that is, and constantly mining that information out when we're reaching out to our customers, whether it be for a claim or additional coverages or predicting that future, knowing what the next item they're going to buy or the next question they might have. And that's what business intelligence starts to do. If you start to monitor the activity of your clients, you can actually start to predict what their next question will be. So that's very important to do. One of the things I wanted to bring out from business side is the factors that influence brokerage value. And I brought this up at a users group that I came to Canada and presented, and I also did this across the US. And there's 30-some identifiable different factors to set the value on a brokerage or an agency. But I want to pull these 10 out. They're ranked the top 10, and just give you a chance to look at and say, these are the different things that I need to focus on to be successful in the future. And the number one is retention. So how do we build retention? What is retention? Isn't it a relationship management? But isn't it also retention the biggest factor for identifying the stability of your brokerage? Because if 20% of your business is leaving every year, does that give you a sound feeling of stability? Probably not. So when we look at how are we going to approach the future, we pull some key elements out of there. One of them is, let's improve our retention. Okay? If we do have this competition of direct companies, what is that difference that we can provide to make it better to retain these clients? Because we want to increase that retention. The average retention rate is about 90%. We all know what average means, right? Yeah, it's not the best. And so 90% or better is what we're going to be looking for. Growth in new business. When we talk about managing our producers, our salespeople that are out there, do you know these numbers? Do you know your retention rates in your brokerage by producer, by CSR, by company, by line of business? Because you need to know that information, and you need to know their growth ability in order to help plan for the goal setting. But when I ask this question, there's so many people that don't know that, don't feel they have the information to track it. And yet it's really vital to bring us into this information age. Remember I talked about in the years past we used historical information, then we moved to more of that real-time view, but now we want to have business intelligence. So we need to see information that we can pull out and have available to help predict our futures. Account development, operational profitability, and productivity. Everybody wants to measure productivity. It's not busy work, not to be confused with busy work. It's true productivity. So I want to share with you just a few things about these items and how we might address them from a technology standpoint for the future. Because obviously if these are our key to the future is building better retention, having higher sales, more profitability, more productivity, then we need to know what to do and how to attack them. And like I said, we have to understand our business issues, which a lot of you will say, yeah, we know that. What we want to do is marry that in, with the technology that we have. Because one of the things I found out is systems are underutilized in the agency and brokerage world, whether it be in the US or Canada. There's only a small percentage, a lot less than 50%, of those brokerages and agencies that actually use their technology from a utilization standpoint. And so we have a long way we can go with it to help us in the future. So let's look at retention. Well, we want to maintain 90% or better, right? Because 90% is the average. We have to look at different ways that we can build on this, because retention is going to help us compete, and it's going to help us build a more stable book of business. And sometimes when we look at retention, we're satisfied with 90%. I always like to convert it. What's the attrition rate? 10%. Now it sounds a little funny losing 10% of your business every year, doesn't it? I mean, in 10 years, you're out of business. So we really have to really look at this number. Client service standards. How many of you have client service standards in place? Okay. Something that you can really address and measure yourselves with. And I think that's important from a retention standpoint, because that's how you're going to retain people, is to brand yourself as a brokerage with a certain level of service. We can't all walk around and say we have the best service in town, right? Because when I have that conversation, I'll ask, well, what makes you different in your community? We have the best service. And I come back and say, well, we have the worst service. I mean, what are we talking about service? You know, we have to measure that. So having client service standards in place that you can measure against using technology, like how long it takes to get a response out, how do you handle claim situations, you know, do you handle everything the same in your agency or brokerage? How many of you feel you have consistent workflows? Because those are two big objectives of mine this year in our agency, are consistency and accountability. Because we're one of the few industries that actually allow a lot of inconsistency. Think about it. If you have an auto plant here in Canada making cars, and everybody got to put the parts on differently. Now you'll have a car come out the other end, right? But what's it going to look like? How is it going to run? Will it start? You know, these are all questions we'd ask. Now think about the brokerage. We have claims coming in the front door, right? And they're all getting paid. But what's happening in between? What kind of experience are you providing? What kind of client service standard do you have in those different areas? And how can you maintain a client service standard if everybody's doing it differently, right? Now some of you look at it and say, wow, this guy, he's not talking about anything funny anymore. I think it's really something that we need to face as an industry, because the future is going to require that we maintain this consistency, because our direct writers that we're talking about as being competitors and other ways that might compete with us in the future are going to make a success of it, because why? They're going to be consistent in their delivery, in their servicing, and everything that they're going to do, because they'll become more efficient by becoming consistent. Automate renewal contact plans. You know, it can't just be the billing going to them. As carriers moved from the brokerage bill to the direct billing methods, what did we lose as brokers? Our connections. We have no connectivity with them now. When do we communicate with them? Either their non-pay cancellation status or they have a claim, but not much communication in the other part. So we have opportunities there. Midterm client contacts. Understanding the needs of our customer. What's their next purchase? Offering appropriate coverage options. You know, you don't want to offer watercraft insurance for somebody that lives in the desert, right? Just won't fly, most likely. I mean, knowing where they live, what they do, what their interests are, true CRM to understand their next buying purchase. Who's going to buy the toys and who may not? And then how can you be there and available for that? All this really comes down from retention. It's just having more data, right? The more you know about somebody, the more you can predict what their next need is. But a lot of us don't have those standards built up in order to maintain that data. Everybody enters a new customer a different way. Everybody uses a different workflow. Some fill out contact information and some do not. So it doesn't really matter what technology you're using, it's about building that consistency within your operations. Well, growth in new business. A study that we have in the US that talks about average growth, it was 11%, or 7% in 2010 or 11. And 10 and 11, not or. In 2010 or 11. And if you compare that, the new business growth, and you look at the average attrition rates, what do we need as new business in a brokerage to maintain ourselves and have just average growth? Well, nearly 20% new business growth. So again, knowing these numbers, knowing where we stand, how are we going to build ourselves as a future? One of the things I think you can do to help build new business is understanding your brand yourself. What is your brand? What do you offer that's different? What are the three components of a sale that makes a sales decision for a client? Well, we have service, we have coverage, and we have price. You can talk about a lot of others, but it really comes down to those three, right? And how much control do we as brokers have in price? How much in coverage? I mean, we can't provide more coverage than the company provides, right? So what does it boil down to, what we can do? Service. So we need to look at our brand, what we are, who we are, what we're going to do as far as product offerings, what type of clients we're going to go after in the future, the niches we might have, geographically where we'll be, what's our service commitment, what's the difference between us and them, you or your competitor. And sometimes we want to say insurance is a commodity and it's all about price. And I'd like to share this quick story. Some of you may have heard it. About a couple years ago, our washer and dryer, we had a nice washer and dryer front load, and it was not working. It was just a bad deal, and we paid a lot for it. And I told my wife, I said, you know what, they're on sale at Home Depot. We're going down. White is the only color choice we have, and it's the one that's on sale at $550 for the pair. We're going down to get it. So we head down to Home Depot. We're looking around at all these washer and dryers. I still have this one in mind, right? Price, that's what I want. Well, we left there with an LG stackable, stainless steel, more technology than this remote clicker. And of course, I can't do the wash anymore. Well, it's very difficult to operate. And, but the point is we went in there with our goals of pricing, and when we were going through and understanding the value propositions, the coverage, or the service that might be provided, we bought a different washer and dryer. And it was a good buy. It's still running. I still don't know how to operate it. So I think it was a good purchase for a lot of reasons. Managing sales pipeline. How many of you have an actual sales pipeline plan for your producers? A couple. Do you know that a producer that uses a sales pipeline tool has a 20% higher income than one that does not? Because they can manage more contacts, more leads, more prospects. When I look at our producers, the number of active leads that they're working on, hundreds of leads, because all they focus in is the next day's task list. Hundreds of leads, because all they focus in is the next day's task list. They don't worry about remembering to contact Bob next week, because it's going to tell them in the pipeline tool when it's time to contact them. So it's not only just the piece of tracking the results, because not many producers want to go and enter in activity into some program to see charts and graphs. It doesn't interest them. But when you tie in a pipeline tool that actually manages their prospects, that feeds them the leads, that helps make those sales, and you understand how many appointments does it take to get a sale. So that means you have to ask yourself, does every producer know their close ratio? That's really important information. What about their goal to sales ratio that they're reaching each day and each month? If we're running our producers with the old adage of using the production reports, we're providing old news, right? A production report sometimes can be 30 to 45 days late. We never go to a football game and read the score next week, do we? We don't. We will look for it right then on the scoreboard. And yet, our salespeople are out there playing the sales game, and we're not giving them support from a sales pipeline or the ability to track the results in real time. And then when you talk about business intelligence, if you know those real-time results, can you not predict how many appointments are needed next week in order to meet their sales goal? Very easily. Account development. Well, on average, the broker percentage of accounts that have multiple policies are 72% for commercial and 64% for personal. So what does that give us? Lots of opportunity, right? Lots of opportunity to get multiple policies. Again, using business intelligence, we can do cross-selling of our accounts, not just blasting everybody out with a letter, whether they need that coverage or not, but getting into our data and for the future understanding what is our consumer going to buy, what can we provide for them, so that we're not sitting there spending a lot of time spinning our wheels, but we're doing very targeted and focused marketing on our cross-sell opportunities. We want to be able to predict what their next need is. And we can do that if we know their buying habits and tracking them. So it's not just about doing a payment, it's not just about filing a claim, it's not just about getting download. You know, we used to look at this in the States and see people getting downloaded policies, and I'd ask them, where do you get your information when a client calls? And they said, well, I go to the file. I said, well, you know, what'll save you a lot of time, money, and effort is just on your electronic file, put C paper file, and don't enter any more, because you're just doing a bunch of work for maintaining data that you never go to. We just hired somebody new that's starting this next week, and they're talking about the filing systems and everything. I said, unfortunately, we don't have files. And they said, well, we keep them in shelves and that type of stuff and then shred them later. I said, we shred ours every day. I mean, any paper that comes in is gone by the end of the day. So if you don't know how to use technology and retrieve this information, it's going to be difficult, because there is no paper laying around. And the other thing we want to look at is when we look at paper, can I pull data out of paper? Not very easily. So data is very important. So we have maintained a standard set of data entry methods and coding and setups in our agency. And Cal covers that. What does standards allow me to do? Again, if every brokerage entered things the way they want to, or every agency entered the way they want to, we'd have 30,000 standards. How do we communicate? So we came back to our agency and said, again, we have control over this. We're going to take those Accord standards in the States, and they became our standards. for completing applications. Now we have standard information, so download looks the same, and now in the real-time world, we can send that same information to multiple carriers, third parties, claim notifications, whatever we want to do, because we have standard data in our system to move wherever we want to put it. So all of this supports that standards, those consistent workflows, and when you talk about the future, I have a difficult time predicting the future, but what I do know is we have to work a lot smarter. And it's going to involve data and data management. And yet we're a long ways away. Operational profitability. Well, we all want that, right? Average profits are 9%. And no matter what side of the board we're on, it's the profits that help us pay for new dual monitors, wireless headsets, new chairs, a new desk, whatever it might be. So it's important that we have that. Now we can increase our revenue or decrease our expenses. What do we have more fun doing? Okay? We don't like to cut expenses because what is the first thing that we try to cut? Our human resources, which is one of our most valuable pieces, but it's a big cost, so it's an easy cut and reward type basis when they look at it. I had a principal in southern Michigan call me and they're talking about doing something with their producer commission scales. And you could tell what the challenge was is they were low on profitability and they weren't really productive, and so the first thing to do is start to cut on the pay. So if you're going to cut on expenses, I actually like to focus in on some of the workflows. Why should we cut the people out when the workflows are so inefficient? You know, that's what we really need to work on. Increasing revenue, obviously, if we're building better relationships, we're focusing on retention and new business growth, you know, we are going to be able to increase our revenue. And if people can actually become more productive, not busy, we'll be able to do that. So we have many opportunities for cost savings, downloading of policy information. In the States, we have claims download. So instead of having to go in for a real-time claim inquiry, which is very nice for detailed information, the companies are constantly streaming us down the claims as they're being assigned, turned in, paid, closed, reserve changes, whatever it might be, is constantly coming in. Now, a lot of brokerages might stand back and say, well, we don't keep track of that information now. And I agree, the larger percentage do not track that type of claim information in their systems, but why don't they? That's business intelligence, right? So what we're doing is by getting claims download, we start to predict what the next issues are with our clients so we can make proactive contacts with them. Because we already said that Monday morning is what? It's a very reactive day. We're a reactive business. Can't we look at changing all that to be more proactive? That our contacts reach out to our clients before they call us? How much time would that save us? You know, we can have more of that relationship building time if we can do that. Activities and notifications. That's a new standard that's starting to build in the States. We have a lot of carriers that support it in our agency, but when you talk about a non-pay cancellation coming in, or a policy renewal declaration page, or a renewal quote, or one of dozens of alert type messages, and I call them alerts because that's what they used to be called, but we're going to call them activities and notifications. This information is coming from the carriers into our system. We capture it, we assign it and match it up to the client, and we look to see who the account manager or producer is, and we forward that to them electronically. No email. Did we all not agree email wasn't very effective or efficient? So now we bring them into a management system where we can actually use the word manage, and we're managing those transactions and handling them where they need to be handled. So we're using claims download, activity notifications, commission transactions, policy information, all of this data that we want to bring in. Now, there's always a discussion, disagreement, argument about where data should be. But when we're trying to aggregate it, you know, we want to have all of our data for all carriers, all clients within our system so we can aggregate it and work with it. And that's been one of our goals. For the future, we want to know our data so we can use business intelligence to predict the future, to be able to predict what we need to do from a sales standpoint or a service standpoint. Document management. I think in the States, we were unfairly represented to by vendors that came in with document management solutions that said, you can do the same workflow you do today, and we'll just file your paper away electronically. When everybody around us, whether it be an insurance carrier, the health industry, whoever, that actually implement document management, what did they do? They took the images and converted them electronically and then forwarded them out to everybody to handle. Why were we given that workflow? Because we didn't want to change. Agencies and brokerages have a hard time changing. So the best way to introduce technology is Do it all the same way, and we'll just tag this on the end. In document management, if you actually change from a back-end scanning system to a front-end document management, and by management we mean managing those documents and communication, we can save 30% the time that we'd normally spend. So you realize that in order to get improvements in our operations, we need to make change. Because if we do it the same way, we're not going to see that. We have to work harder or faster, which we all agree we don't want to do. So we want to work smarter. Real-time transactions. We're going to talk about them at the end of the day and actually show what we're using in the agency. And it's going to really see a lot of different types of transactions, and we'll talk about some of the future. If we have data, what type of future opportunities would we have in real time? Because it's not just with carriers, it's with third parties, right? If we can move data and information instantly, maybe we can get some responses back instantly to help service our clients, sell them more coverage, identify markets, those types of things. So there's a lot of opportunity in real time outside just the agency or brokerage and the company communication path. But it's about handling it in real time, effectively, efficiently, with the least amount of hassle from a password situation, which that's why we brought up the ID Federation, which is a ways off, but you know what, there's a lot of other opportunities to manage those too in Canada, and we'll talk about them and show them. Productivity. Everybody always wants to know these numbers. One of the things I have made sure to tell people as I'm speaking here is if you're going in for a review next, if you're a CSR, don't go in and say, I was very busy. Because it doesn't fly very well, because busy is not productive. We're not in a cost-plus business, right? That means that we can't sell our product and at the end of the year bill everybody for the extra servicing we put into their account. Anybody try that? It doesn't really work. So we're cost-plus. So we need to show our CSRs, our producers, our staff, and realize when we write this account, this revenue amount here, that's what we get all year long. That's it. No matter what we do with this account, that's all we get. Some producers, or some brokers and agencies will actually use security to block that out. They say, I don't want everybody to see how much we make on an account. I always say, I'd like them to see how little we make and understand that those amounts are shrinking and we need to be effective, we need to be productive, right? Because the revenue is shrinking, and when we only get $25 or $35, US or Canadian, it's just not enough, is it, sometimes? I'll use a quick example. On our select business side, try to be very efficient like we do in personal lines, and it was just this one account that came up, and the CSR knew the person, and it was a special event. What does special event tell you? No renewal, right? Okay, so it's a one-time policy, and they're out there shopping 2, 3, 4 carriers, and they're all coming in about $250, $350, $375. So what's the revenue? 10%? Okay. So next time I said, when that person calls, we'll give them a donation, send them somewhere else because we'll be further ahead. So we had to understand our CSRs know what our cost per hour is. We calculate that out and let everybody know that in personal lines and commercial and select business, this is our cost per hour. This is if we were billing it out, this is what it'd be. So when you see that next $35 account, realize that. It's not that we judge everything by how much it makes. We just want to judge how much it doesn't make before we extend a huge amount of service to it. There are ways of doing that to understand those accounts too, and we use an ABCD rating to assign the value of that relationship, to understand that relationship better. Because it's really important. All companies do it in some way or another. A lot of times brokers and agencies do it too, they just don't want to talk about it. You know, you have that account that you'll call, make that little special effort for, but we just don't indicate that necessarily on their files. So we want to get operational improvements in both our work methods, because automation has a significant impact on making this work better. So if we understand what the issues are from a business side, it's about being productive. We can't just throw technology out there. We need to understand what's technology going to do for us to make it more productive. A national super regional carrier in the Midwest surveyed their agencies last year. I think it was last July or the July before, but they were asking about real time, and about half of them didn't really know why they were doing real time. And the message that Cal's talking about that we put out through the real time campaign, we're continually blasting about these workflows, but sometimes as brokers and agencies missing the point of why they're out there. It's just not about using technology, it's about understanding what the problem is, and technology will help fix that. It'll make us more productive. So operational improvements, when we talk about workflow changes, does involve change. And change, as Cal mentioned, takes 21 days. By the way, it takes 21 days to build a habit, good or bad. So it's really important to nurture a good habit with your staff for that 21-day period, because a bad one can create itself just as easily. But a lot of times we see something new and we try it for a day or two and say, no, the old way works better. That's because we didn't give it that 21 days. I saw this culture change in our own agency when we made some changes, and I went up to the front desk, the receptionist, and there was a sticky note, which I hate. But a sticky note was on there, and what did it have on there? 21. Just the number 21. To remind her that I'm going to do this for 21 days because it will become a habit for me. So that's a culture you build in your agency about embracing change. Understanding it does take some time. When you're talking about productivity, everybody wants to know, are my people productive or not, or am I productive or not? One of the best indicators is what we call a spread. A spread is the amount of compensation that a person's getting from a servicing standpoint, including any type of additional compensation besides their regular wages. Take that away from their revenue that they control. Not the revenue they write, but the revenue they control. So if they have a producer they're working with, that becomes their spread. And a spread in an agency or brokerage is then used to pay the profit, the producer sales expenses, the overhead expenses, everything else that an agency has. The reason why we use this as a productivity number is the biggest human resource cost to us as an agency goes to the service side. If we have a 90% retention, 90% of our business is being renewed. So service is a key element there. So if we can see how productive we are on the service side, it really helps determine the productivity in the entire brokerage. We have automated workflows opportunities that we don't even grasp on what the ability to put those in place, and that's where we can build our consistencies. Where somebody calls on a claim or calls on a change, and we follow an automated set of steps to get us there. So everybody has the same contact, the same type of service level, same type of response time, and so on. We can build consistency using those types of workflows. We can reduce the time on redundant tasks that we have in by building in some automated tasks. And we can also free up the staff time so we can have more of that client interaction. The positive, proactive approach is where somebody actually picks up the phone and calls a client and says, how are you doing? I'm just calling to check on things. When was the last time you had that opportunity? Very difficult in a reactive world. When we're talking about utilization of technology from a productivity standpoint, we want to be able to focus on that processing time. So do you know in your brokerage how long it takes to do an auto ID card? How long does it take to process an application? How long does it take to handle a personalized quote from start, the initial call, to the delivery of a proposal? What's your close ratio? These are all questions that you think about, do I really know that? Do I know how much time I'm putting into some of these accounts? One of the things that we found, and I'll show you this in the last session, is that we were able to take real time and some workflow, automated workflows, and take our time of contact with a personalized customer and delivery of a quote and knock it down to 17 minutes. So if the average in the States is a little over an hour and we're at 17 minutes, what's that from productivity? About 24 a day compared to 8 a day, if that's all they were doing. The other thing we got out of it is we get to a true point of contact. When somebody calls, we can hold on to them for 17 minutes. You can't keep them on hold for an hour and a half, can you? I mean, you can try. They may not be there. So we want to keep them within the workflow, but be able to turn that time. How did we do it? Well, we used real time. Let's get our information, pass it off to many carriers, let them give us some rates back quickly. We wanted to take our automated workflow so the workflow is always consistent. It happens the same way for everybody that calls. And then as soon as we could get us consistently doing the same thing, we could build improvements. So my message to our staff when this first started from a consistency standpoint is, it's okay to be wrong. We're going to be consistently wrong. Okay? Everybody will be wrong. Because we can fix that, can't we? If everybody's doing it the wrong way, can we not change that habit together? What about if 3 are doing it this way and 2 are doing it another way and another third are doing it over there a completely different way? How do we get a handle on that? We can't. We can't become more productive. We can't raise our level of service. It's very much an impossible task. I bring this up because when we talk about change, change is difficult, right? Who likes change? Okay. A few people. It's scary when I see who does raise their hand for change. But I like change because it has made our jobs exciting, right? We're one of those few industries that actually can go out and change the direction we market. Quick story on change. I'm watching my time too, okay? Did you give me the 15 yet?
Yeah.
You did?
It just did, yeah. You're good.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Okay, we'll stand up next time.
You have to go like this. My son, he started out in the business, and he started out just as he was coming out of college, so he was licensed. He did a little bit of work down at Mount Pleasant at Central Michigan, and he was going and working with attorneys, and he was successful with them. He was writing the professional liability and the packages for these attorneys, and I was so excited because they're nice size accounts. And when he came back, I said, Tyler, I have all these marketing leads for attorneys. We're going to go after them for you. And he said, time out, Dad. I don't like working with attorneys. I don't like talking to them. I don't like the way they talk. I don't even like that business. And I said, you know what? That's what's really unique about the insurance business and why it's so much fun, because guess what? You don't have to. You can go after this niche or that niche. Same with workflows. We can change our workflows to keep our business dynamic. And that's what makes it exciting. So exactly what we resist so much is actually one of the most exciting pieces of our business, is we have the ability to change by brokerage and by agency on our own, from a direction or the way we handle our business or our servicing. But most importantly, we can't have everybody changing on their own. We have to change it and manage it together. This is a concept that Accord came out with years ago. It was reintroduced, almost 5 years ago. But it's a 5-step process, and this has really become our culture. So anytime we look at change, we basically follow through these 5 steps. Step 1, we focus on the customer. All of our workflows and how they impact the customer becomes number 1. So when a CSR says, I like to email only, well, I don't care what you like. Unfortunately, we need to look at what the customer likes, right? Now, it isn't that I'm trying to be mean to our CSR, it's that we are based off our customers. We need to understand them. So everything starts to focus around the customer. Our second step is to find the costs. We have to understand how much time we spend on each one of these different tasks. Time, effort, that means our hands-on time and our elapsed time. So we can find those different costs. Our third step is just to get that cost out of there. How do we reduce those steps? How do we shrink them down? How do we take certain steps out that don't add value and add others that do add value? Step 4, we want to streamline the work. Because we're talking about efficiencies, we need to streamline the amount of time we're spending. But we also know, if we go all the way back to the first slides, is our consumers looking for a different level of service these days. So we have to understand it isn't about taking weeks and weeks to get something done. They want it in minutes or hours, most likely minutes. And number 5, step number 5 is ensuring the results. We have to have a way of measuring whatever we set up, the accountability piece. So if you don't and can't get that data from your brokerage, whether it be through manual entries or a broker management system or whatever it might be, if you can't get that, find out how you can. Because the only way we can have success in change and success in what we're doing is be able to measure those results. So just in quick summary, 10. Thank you. So you guys stand up high there. I'm going to be done early, I can tell you that. In summary, technology is underutilized. Do you agree? When you think about what you're using in your own brokerage, do you feel like you could do a lot more? What holds you up? A lot of times people don't know where to start. Where do we start? Well, a good way to look at it is sort of put that in a phased approach. I always suggest a 4-phased approach. That first phase is just understanding the way your management system's set up, the way your workflows are set up. A lot of that change, power of change suggestion there, just to map out your entire workflows, to know where they're at. But it is difficult to tackle the utilization of technology. But I think it's very important, it's critical. Do you know that if you were owned a manufacturing plant, the owner of the manufacturing plant would always know what that machine would do, right? They may not come to the floor and operate it, but they can tell its production levels, they know what happens if it's down, they know what kind of maintenance schedules they have, they know a lot about that machine. How many of you as broker principals know what your machine will do? A lot of times I hear them say, and these are the peers that I connect with, they tell me, you know what, the girl takes care of it. That's what it is. Or somebody takes care of it. I have an IT person. The owner of a manufacturing plant never says, I have a machine person. I mean, I can tell you what that does because that's what I base my whole business operations on. What's the second biggest expense in the brokerage? Usually technology. If you put it all out there, human resources first, technology is a distant second, but it's second. And then all other expenses that are associated with the brokerage operation. So for being that big of an expense and underutilizing it, If we spend the same amount on technology and I'm utilizing it and you're not, there's a huge competitive difference there. So you want to make sure to bring that out. Greater efficiencies can be gained. We all know that we have all kinds of opportunities open there, but change is going to be a key, and so is utilization. We have download capabilities, whether it be policy information, claims data, activities, notifications, commission transactions. They may not be here today, but we as brokers can group together. That's one thing I notice as I travel around. In some areas, people will share information, and others, they try to keep it really close to themselves. And I really ask brokers to open up and share in those areas, because that will not be your competitiveness with each other. That's going to be your competitiveness with other delivery methods. So as brokers, you should group together when it comes to technology and making it more efficient, because that's not going to be your difference. Your difference should be where? We have service, coverage, price. Service. And technology will be the tool you use. We never hid the technology of a fax machine, did we? We didn't have a lot of different fax machines out there. They became a standard so that they were usable. We have standards in email, so it's usable. Standards in technology, in broker management systems, and transferring that data through CSIO. Those are what's going to help us become more competitive with other ways of delivery. So we want to make sure to understand that. But there's a lot of download opportunities. When it comes to real time is just because when it comes to the future, we all agree that things are changing. And we need to be able to operate multi-generationally, right? You can't just put a sign on the door and we only take care of seniors, right? That won't work. I qualify for AARP right now, so that's my group now. But that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you can take any way they want to communicate. Cal, you covered that really well. We have to understand how they're going to communicate and be there to respond to them. We can't say, I'm sorry, I don't take faxes, right? Although that was an answer years ago. So real time gives us all kinds of opportunity in the service, new business, claims, and this afternoon I'm going to share with you what the future could hold there as far as transactions, and just give you some ideas of what we could be doing with technology to connect ourselves with our partners, but then also reach out into that third-party world. What could we do with real-time transactions? The ability to log in to anywhere for information and pass critical information from our side and get a response back. That'll help drive the future. So do I know where the future is going? I don't, because I was on camera, so I want to make sure that was officially I don't know. But on my own business, I think I do have a better handle on the future because of the way we use technology, the way we use data, the way we predict how we're going to work in service with our customers, being proactive versus reactive. And so that means that the future is really in your hands, right? It's really what you have control over as brokers, whether it be with your staff or as the principal, of taking this technology now and bringing it back and saying, how do I use technology to answer these business issues that I've had? How can I be better off in the future? Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll see you this afternoon.